Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to TRB. I'm John. Thanks for joining us on this episode. We hope you are doing well. We hope your March is off to a great start. And if you are a Star Wars fan, it probably is because The Mandalorian's back. If you haven't yet, head back and check out our first episode of the year for the Mando fan show. We talked all about Chapter 17 of The Mandalorian. That is on your podcast feed and, of course, our YouTube channel. And while I have you on that topic, youtube.com/@theresistance broadcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel for our video versions of our episodes and a lot of other videos as well, including James's Bad Batch reactions. We even do some reacting in shorts to a lot of other stuff going on in nerd world pop culture. So check out our channel and, of course, subscribe in your preferred podcast apps. So this Wednesday, the Mando fan show will be back again, as we'll talk about Chapter 18, and we'll be joined by Kevin from Toying Around as our first guest of the season. So very excited for that. Lacey, James, it is time to talk about Star Wars news, and it's sort of like during a streaming season for a Star Wars show, we like jumble up our episodes. So we got Will of the Force in this episode and Resistance Report. Are you guys ready to tackle this monster?
We're right into it. Let's go. Resistance Report.
It's the Resistance.
Guys, we're going to kick it off right away with more details on The Mandalorian Season 3. Now, I know we did the Mando fan show on Wednesday, but this is news that came out that kind of discusses all of The Mandalorian season. It was new information that we got each of the directors for each episode. Now, a couple we knew, including like Rick Famuyiwa doing the first one and the 7th and the 8th as well. But for episode 2, we're getting Rachel Morrison. Episode 3, Lee Isaac Chung. Episode 4, Cara Weathers. Episode 5, Peter Ramsey. Episode 6 is the Bryce Dallas Howard episode. And then 7 and 8, again, Rick Famuyiwa. So this is kind of exciting. If anybody wants to go and look up these specific people and the other jobs that they've worked on. We even have another story like this coming up later. But I'm going to start with John on this one. What are your thoughts on these directors? Good choice? Are you excited? What can we pick apart from who has what episode?
Well, I feel like Rick Famuyiwa, who has been around for a long time, but I don't think was necessarily a household name in terms of popularity, has really stepped up, and he's doing producing, and now he's directing more than a third of this whole season, including the bookend of beginning and end. And, just hearing this guy in the gallery, Disney Plus gallery for The Mandalorian, talking about Star Wars, you can tell how much he cares about it, how much he understands it, and he's obviously very talented. So when you mix all those things together, it just, you talk about like protection. Having this guy at both ends of this season just feels like a really secure feeling. And when Jon Favreau is behind it all too, it just doubles down on that, especially for a franchise that has had some rocky waters with productions over the past 10 years. And you can't say that about The Mandalorian. They even filmed and successfully finished production during the pandemic for one of their seasons. So The Mandalorian is a machine that is well-oiled and running well. I also find it interesting that, you have someone like Lee Isaac Chung, who 2 years ago was nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. And I bet if you asked people, what do you think of Lee Isaac Chung, they would have no idea who you're talking about, like the average movie fan. So the fact that, Favreau's getting these people in the mix for Star Wars, these Academy Award nominated directors, to do an episode of his space Western is outstanding. And I don't want to get I'm not going to get spoilery at all. If you watch the Mando fan show, the three of us were fortunate enough to watch Chapter 18 of this season. And we saw what Rachel Morrison was able to bring to the table. And I don't want to be that guy, but I'm pumped for everyone to see what she did with this episode, because I think she may have even outdone Rick in his first episode. So I think, and Bryce Dallas Howard, you don't need to say anything about her. She's proven herself through and through at this point. So I'm very excited for her episode as she hands it off to Rick to close it out. Carl Weathers is great. Not super familiar with Peter Ramsey. I'm sure if I looked him up in more detail, I would. But I think this is a really good lineup and a nice mixture of people. And something that's special about The Mandalorian is, Favreau's a very hands-on showrunner. He's been there. You see him in the shots. He's working with the directors. They're all a team. And that's what makes this show, even though there's all these different directors and visions, it still flows really nicely from a visual perspective and doesn't jar you too much. Like if they threw like Tarantino in chapter 5 or something like that in the middle. So I think overall, one, I trust Favreau through and through. He's one of the greatest at this point. I think this is a really, really strong list, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the episodes.
Yeah, Lacey, do you agree with that? Is there anything that stands out to you specifically?
Well, it's exciting to see similar faces coming back between Rick, Carl, and Bryce, to see like names that we know are true to the Mandalorian, in the sense that they've been through this process a couple times now. They know what the audience is looking for. They know what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are looking for, and they get these characters, especially Rick above everybody else. I think it's just like someone that is fully invested in this. So it's exciting to see those names. I like seeing new names as well, because it just gives different points of view and experience to the table. I love Peter Ramsey. I think he did an amazing job of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Like, he was one of the directors that did that movie. And so I'm hoping his episode is definitely action-packed, because as we know, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a lot of like action, and it's got this kind of comic book feel, and I think he would really shine at that. But also, I'm talking about Spider-Man, is one of the kind of like most stunning animated features I've ever seen. Like the whole
100%.
shot jumping from the top down, but he's upside down, and it's like that whole segment of like
Yeah.
the leap is like one of the most powerful moments, I would say, animated or not. Like the idea that you're taking that leap and believing in yourself and taking that moment could really translate into something for the Mandalorian or another character in this series. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm happy to see Carl Weathers being on here again, because we know he loves being behind the camera. I would probably, if you were to ask him, he'd probably lean towards that now. He's gotten that bug that he really enjoys doing it. And I know obviously he has an important character in this series. We've already seen him in the first chapter 17, but I feel like giving him more opportunity to really flex behind the camera is making him happy as well. I don't know much about Rachel and Lee. I know I've seen some people talk about them online, and they're coming from amazing projects and award-winning projects, which I truly appreciate. And like John was just saying, I think we've always said that Jon Favreau is one of those people that just picks the right people. He knows who he needs to get the job done and to get it done better than he could have done. And I think that by creating a team of diverse, new, old experience, like coming from different points of view, makes a more interesting show, because everybody gets to have their little stamp on each one of these little arcs. But like John said, we saw chapter 18, and Rachel did an awesome job. You guys are going to love it. That's all I can say about it. It's a great, great chapter to The Mandalorian, and I have no doubt that I would love to see her do more. But yeah, I think this is great.
Yeah, I looked up a lot of these people, and sometimes it's tough to find like Peter Ramsey, for instance, like has a lot going on, but then like IMDb and other places don't list Mandalorian as an option. So I'm like, is this the right person? Am I looking at the right person? And they're all sort of like that. Rachel Morrison specifically doesn't have like, oh, I see here. Okay, The Mandalorian, one episode, there it is. But I was looking at her stuff, and I was like, where did she come from? And she's done a lot of work with Ryan Coogler in specifically Fruitvale Station, but then eventually Black Panther. Yeah, but Black Panther didn't come till after she worked on a movie called Dope, who was directed by Rick Famuyiwa.
Yeah.
And so I looked at this and I'm like, okay, so she's mainly a cinematographer, but she has worked with Rick in the past and has done a little bit of directing on her own as far as television goes. So I think the connection was actually not so much Jon Favreau in this case, but I think this is Rick working as his first year as an executive producer, pulling in Rachel here because he knows that she has something special and brought her in. As I know, what can you say about some of the other people? I mean, like you mentioned, Lacey, Peter Ramsey, like he is all over the place as far as the animated stuff that he's worked on and the live action stuff that he's worked on as well. It's quite incredible. These are all very good picks. Like John said, we've all seen the second episode. Rachel crushes it, so there's to say that. The only thing I think to not talk about the people that we don't really know a whole lot about, I think the Rick Famuyiwa thing is interesting, bookending the series, which he specifically talked about, and we're kind of speculating where that might go as well. As far as if you watch Mando Fan Show, Lacey brought up the point of the pirates being someone that would show up in the first episode and then also later at the end of the season. That's a very good point. So maybe look forward to that. And I think the wild card here is sort of the Bryce Dallas Howard episode. You got episode 6. If not Dave Filoni, she's the other one that sort of works with the female centric episode. So I don't know if that again points to the episode 6 being like Ahsoka related or something.
Because I thought the same thing when I looked at this list the first time. I was like, oh, Dave Filoni's not on this list.
Dave Filoni's not on the list. Jon Favreau's not on the list. And there's not really like a...
What do you think that means? Do you think that means they're just taking a step back? And this could be for John too. Do you guys think that they're taking a step back? Do you think they're focused on other projects? Because we know Filoni's been pulled into some movie talks.
Well, Filoni's directing a bunch of episodes on Ahsoka too, so he could have been doing a lot of pre-production work on that.
Sure.
And also he has that new creative executive role at Lucasfilm, so he may be doing a lot of... And he was also... I know it's rumored because the
that's what I was mentioning, the Damon Lindelof thing.
He was in the writer's room, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So it's so crazy, by the way, that thing is like doesn't officially exist yet.
It will in a month.
I know, but it's so funny that we talk about it so much. Yeah. I think that's why. I don't know if James has a different thought on that, but I think it's just his plate was pretty full, and he's directing, they say, multiple episodes of Ahsoka on top of all that. So.
I mean, Ahsoka's his baby.
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to that. I also think like as far as John and Dave go is now they're also looking at Skeleton Crew, and they're also looking at
that's a great point.
Potentially expanding out beyond that. I mean, there was a period too where they were looking at Rangers of the New Republic, and there could be something coming up at Celebration that's another part of this Mandoverse that we don't know about yet, which is another reason where they're like, we'd love to direct this episode, but why don't we bring in, someone I've worked with in the past, Rachel Morrison. She can do episode 2, and then that'll give you guys time to focus on, I don't know.
I mean, it is very
whatever this other show is that they just started working on that we don't know about yet or whatever.
Yeah. You brought up a great point, James. It's very interesting to me. And we love Paul here. He's come on the show before. He's a great supporter. He's awesome. He wasn't at the other premieres, I don't think, for Mando season 1 or season 2. He wasn't very included in any of that except, hey, who is in it? Which, of course, is a great inclusion. But he was very much invited this season and invited to the red carpet and was interviewed and all these other things. And I don't think he was.
And he showed up in the trailer.
Yes. And I don't think he was in previous things. So that's why I'm sure these guys are too. I'm sitting here with my fingers crossed going, okay, let's rework this. Let's give Paul his own Star Wars show. Because we know that King's Convenience sadly came to an end. So he's got some time now. Obviously, he's also doing Avatar. I don't want to downplay that either. But I'm sure his schedule will free up after Avatar to take on some Star Wars. And what better person to helm a Star Wars show than someone as big as a fan as Paul, and talented. I don't want to downplay how talented he is, but it's just always cool to think here's a guy that goes to Comic-Cons and, cosplays and builds his own stuff and collects toys and all this other stuff. And he's going to be the lead in a Star Wars show. I would love that for him.
Yeah, I was trying to say quickly if we looked at the episodes that he was in and if they were like directed by the same person.
Oh yeah,
Well,
maybe.
his
I'm not
Chapter
sure though.
10,
He
chapter
wasn't in
10, the
season 1,
passenger.
right?
Yeah, he was not. But he was in chapter 10, the passenger, in season 2, and chapter 4, the siege, and then he was also in Book of Boba Fett, which was chapter
But I
5.
don't
The
think he
Return
was
of
at those
the
premieres. First of all, I
Mandalorian.
don't think Book of Boba Fett had a premiere, if I remember. I don't think it did because it was during like kind of COVID.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But season 1 of The Mandalorian didn't really have a premiere either. Or season 2, did it have a premiere? It kind of did. I think it had like a panel, but he wasn't there. So it's just interesting that all of a sudden he's there and he's in the forefront, and Star Wars is putting up reels focused on him, which is awesome, and all this other stuff. And it just seems like they're pushing him, rightfully so, because he is a fan favorite character. But could it mean more? Is my question,
Good.
based on what
Um,
James was just saying.
well, the Book of so I was trying to get to it. The Book of Boba Fett episode that he was in was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard,
Yep.
and the Mandalorian episodes he was in was directed by one was Carl Weathers and the other was Peyton Reed. So if you're looking at that, I don't see any connection to his appearance with any specific director, but 2 out of the 3 are directing
Here, yeah.
episodes in this season, so
Yeah.
possibly,
I
it's
don't
tough
make.
to say.
I get that. I don't make those ties though. I'm not
The
trying to be
reason
contrarian,
I
but
do probably is because of the Dave Filoni directs Ahsoka, so we all knew who was showing up in certain episodes and things.
oh,
you know?
that's his character.
Yeah, that's
know?
a little, and that's a little bit different. I understand, but I
Like,
also
like Favreau's writing the season, and he's like, all right, and we need Carson Teva. He's gonna join this season in episode 4 or whatever. Like a supporting character like that, who probably only has a few scenes, he's not gonna be like, I gotta get Carl to direct this episode because Paul Sung Young Lee's in it. Gotta make sure he gets that right. I don't see that as a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The reason I say that though is just because sometimes there are situations where you have a specific voice that you're trying to tell, so you pull in that director. I'm looking at like maybe like a Marvel, for instance, like when other people were directing the Guardians, they brought in James Gunn to be like, can you help us with these scenes? Like, because you direct the Guardians better than we would, or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a specific voice you're going for. So maybe if it was like, oh, this character who's this type of a person or something like that, that's usually, we know that Rick would work well with that person or something. But anyway, it's all speculation at this point. I'm excited to see what we get out of these. I think every season we've had a good new roll of the dice. Like every season we're like, oh, we don't know anything about Deborah Chow. Oh, we don't know anything about, so and so and so and so. And then we like see what they can do and we get excited about their future. The good ones move forward and and I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. It's all in there.
No doubt.
Lacey, you mentioned it quickly earlier, but we should also talk a little bit about how the Mandalorian are handling the loss of Gina Carano and the character of Cara Dune. We did get sort of the basic answer in Mandalorian season 3, episode 1. They addressed it very lightly, but there have been other articles of people asking the questions before the show came out. Hey guys, directors Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, all these people, how are you handling this character? What does the character mean to the importance of the overall story? And we got all sorts of things, but probably most notably is this one that we're pulling from Deadline, where there's a few people that answered the question.
Rick probably is the most kind of straightforward, and Filoni.
But to just like paraphrase the concept of like, Cara Dune is very important in the scheme of like how we got Mandalorian to where he is. But the ultimate thing about this show is it's about Mandalorian and Grogu. So every player is sort of interchangeable. And if we focus on one storyline, it's more acceptable to write out other characters, I think is the
Yeah, they basically said, hey, it's
paraphrasing.
not her story. It's Din and,
Yeah.
and Grogu's story. So yeah, it sucks that she's not going to be in it. And yes, she's a part of the story and plays an important role in their story, but it's still their story. Yeah. I said this on the Mando fan show. I strongly believe they handled it perfectly well. Like I couldn't have thought of a better way for them to handle it. It was some people thought it was like a throwaway quote, which it might have been, but even then the way that they were like, "Oh no, we need a marshal because she's doing this. You know, she's with the special forces." It was very well done. That doesn't seem out of place. Um I've said this before and I'll say it again. This whole scenario with Cara Dune is very sad in the sense that Jon Favreau has created these characters and he believes in these characters because they're from his own mind and they're people that he's put into this story. So we all know that they had more plans for that character, and it's sad that the choices by one person is destroying that story in the sense of not that it's going to be any worse, but it's just changing it from what he originally intended. But hey, it might be better, as in The Force Awakens. Harrison Ford broke his ankle. They then made Rey and Finn more of a friendship that they didn't originally have. They rewrote that whole part to give them more screen time so that Harrison Ford could heal. So we saw the benefits of that. So that might also be happening here. But there is a little bit of a sadness in that you have to feel bad for Jon Favreau where he's like, I really liked this character. And I was one of the people that liked that character too, that I was like, oh, this is such a cool character. And the only person really losing is us, the fans, that we don't get that character anymore. But I think they handled it really well. I think they're handling it very well in this press circuit of, hey, at the end of the day, it's not her story, it's their story. And we're going to handle it the best way possible. And we're going to pivot basically and make it work. But she's not gone. She's still in the world. We just don't see her. And we all know that with Star Wars, it's a big, big galaxy. So there are tons of people and creatures and aliens and all this other stuff and droids that are all over the place at all times. And we don't see them. So she just kind of falls into that bucket. So I think they did it really well.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a smart idea to not just completely ignore the character and
Or
pretend
kill
that
her.
she never happened.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts, John, on how it was handled and how they're kind of talking about the character in general?
I agree with Lacey that they handled it well, and I think the most important part of how they handled it was that they did it immediately. Squashes all speculation, destroys attempts at YouTube videos speculating on what they're going to do. They were just like, 4 minutes into this season, we're going to address it, and we're going to do it swiftly. So I agree with Lacey that they handled it very well from that perspective. Very smart. I think this character is destined for the comics. I don't think we're going to get a recast. I think that would be a horrible burden to put on whoever they recast, because there's a big pocket of angry fans who support Gina Carano, and they would unleash hell on that actor. And who wants to take, like, what's her name? Xena.
Lucy Lawless.
Lucy Lawless was like it was like a rumor that she was fan casted, so then they didn't give her another role because
she was up for a different role.
Yeah, so
wow.
that gets messy. So I think that's off the table. I think they go on with comics. There's a lot of years to play with. They probably have rights from a certain perspective on her likeness. Go on with the comics. Fans who really hate her won't be upset by that because she's not going to be making any money off that. So I think that's where that character is going to live if they decide to do that.
I've always wondered who that other role would be. I wonder if it was like Casca Reeves or something.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, maybe it's even for something that hasn't come out yet. But
yeah,
and there's a lot of nuance to this whole situation, because if you get yourself out of the bubble, zoom out, like I like to say, and look at like real life. Like, we all have family and friends, and they say like stupid things, but they're still our friends, and we still like them, and that sort of thing. If we're all being real, if you're paying attention to social media, especially like Instagram, you see, a lot of people involved with the Mandalorian still follow, and people at Lucasfilm still follow Gina Carano on social media. They like her posts, her normal posts. I think it's a hard thing for fans who just experience that part of it and like which she said such stupid things, and she like dug her heels in the sand and was stubborn and made it worse for herself, and then it got to a point where it was you couldn't come back from it. So the character isn't that valuable. I think it was a fine character. She's not the best actor in the world. It was not worth it for Disney at all to like save her and keep her around. She was very expendable from that perspective. So from everything that I'm seeing connecting the dots, was a Disney decision that was made. Favreau made the role for her. It was probably very, very difficult and hard for him. I'm sure he still likes her from a certain perspective. I don't want to speculate too much on how people feel about people in real life. But it seems like a lot of the cast didn't like her. And I believe even Paul Sung-Young Lee told us, like, he touched on it a bit on our episode. I'll have to look back to see exactly what he said. But I just think that, the juice is not worth the squeeze with the character overall. I think they'll, if anything, do it in a comic. And, and I know fans, rightfully so, were really on after her. And she's the type of person, she's an MMA fighter. She's going to punch back. And she punched back on that stuff. And she probably could have, at the beginning, stepped back and said, I'm really sorry. That was so stupid of me to say that. I don't believe in these vaccines, but, to each their own. Like, I work with people who haven't been vaccinated. It doesn't have to be that big of a thing. But she went too hard with it, and I'm sure it still hurts a lot of the cast and crew because they probably liked her as a person.
I think Bill Burr has even come out and said, like, "Hey, she was nice to me. I think
everyone really enjoyed their experience with her, and I think it was just two separate things. But fans have a hard time separating that stuff. And this isn't me. I'm trying to be careful here. This isn't me defending anything she said.
Defending her, yeah.
Everything she said was completely stupid and ridiculous, and she shouldn't have handled it the way she did by going harder, abhorrent, a lot of the things she said. But there is, the human side of this stuff that people don't really understand. And these people have probably spent a lot of time together. And you see the photos on set of Bryce and her and Favreau talking about her and how he put his hands on her shoulders and said, I believe in you and stuff. There's probably a lot of real human stuff there.
There's a lot of hurt there. Yeah.
It's just a shame. It's a shame, and it's a lot of it's obviously her fault. It's just one of those things that I think, at best, we're going to see that character in a comic, and that'll be it.
I'm interested to on that concept, John. You said that Disney probably has rights to her likeness, or Lucasfilm, or whoever, and I wonder. I don't know the details of that stuff, how that stuff works. Yes, is it that they have the right to use it if they want to use it, but if they use it, they would still have to pay her?
I think I'd love to find out more on this, and I probably should research this because this is important for a lot of things. Because you think about these Padme books that come out, has Natalie Portman's face all over it. Did she sign a deal with George Lucas at the beginning that said Lucasfilm can use my face for things? Carrie Fisher made the joke about it, that George Lucas kept making money off her face, including a shampoo bottle where people would pop her head off, And it's just I think it's part of contract but it might be a case by
funny because she doesn't make money off of that. Because if she did, she would be like, "Yeah, dude,
exactly." Carrie Fisher was made a joke at the tribute at the AFI thing from George Lucas that he makes money off her face. So if Carrie Fisher wasn't making money, Gina Carano's not making money. So it's just a matter of whether or not that was contracted. But it's
the other piece of that too is they literally took everything that had her face on it off the market. All toys, everything got pulled. Because I remember when all of that information happened, specifically the week that she was terminated and they put out that statement from Lucasfilm, every single toy was gone from catalogs, from online.
Do they now make toys?
No.
No? Okay. I just didn't know if because John, you were mentioning a comic book, and I'm like, I don't think they're even stepping back into it at all. How much time would have to pass before they go?
If they
Gentle
do,
Giants, Cara Dune
I don't think they're ever gonna touch that because
I don't either.
Based on the fact that Hasbro pulled every single thing, and on eBay, all that stuff shot up in price immediately.
Well, if that's the case, then Marvel's not going to touch it either, or Dark Horse.
Yeah, nothing. No one's going to touch that character. I think that character's been put into a file and put into a filing cabinet and put into a box and then rolled into a big warehouse like Indiana Jones and the
Other than
Stuff's
probably
in the-
mentioning the character. Like I think like a book could mention the character Cara Dune, but if it has her face or likeness attached in any way, then it probably is
They might
problematic.
mention her. I don't think they're ever going to show her.
That's what I'm saying. Like obviously the Mandalorian season 3 mentions her right away, you know, but it's
Mhm.
like I think that it's okay to say the character's name in context of something, but I think as soon as you start selling a product that is like based around this character,
Right.
then they might end up. I mean, it's not that it's a problem. It's like they could totally do it. The thing is just they just would rather not. You know,
Yeah,
it's like if John, you said it perfectly, juice is not worth the squeeze, and I think
Yeah.
they're just like, you know, just we don't necessarily need to do this.
like if
Hey,
it,
can
if
I
it was
take
like
a-
if it was like Meryl Streep and she had like a major role and she said stupid things, they'd be like, PR machine, let's fix this. But it's Gina Carano. Like Disney's like, get her. What happened? Don't renew her. Get rid of her.
Mhm.
Not only do they get rid of her, then she joined kind of a very political heavy media situation, which Disney would
Oh, yeah.
definitely shy away
Yeah.
from. Disney is not for any strong stance with anything, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I take a stab at who I think Lucy Lawless was up for?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd
yeah.
love to. Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
Garza Fwip, the cantina owner in Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting.
Oh, yes. That is a perfect fit for her. Yeah.
And then they couldn't get her, so they ended up changing it over to Jessica Biel.
Who was
Beals.
wonderful as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a thought. I was trying to think.
Jennifer
Who would
Beal.
I cast? Jennifer? what did I say? Jessica Biel? Is that someone
Yeah.
different?
You always say that. You always say
Do I?
Jessica Biel.
I have.
Yes.
Remember, I told you I have that
Because I
too
don't
with Will.
know. I don't
We had
know
this conversation.
I don't know this girl. Yeah.
I had Will Forte and Will Arnett. I can always mix those guys up. It's just people have sometimes like it's hard. It's like
I think
Yeah.
during Book of Boba Fett, James, you kept saying Jessica Jessica Biel, and we were like, you mean
Probably.
a
Yeah.
summer catch.
Yep, because John kept saying summer catch. Yes, particularly that.
I haven't even heard of that movie, let alone.
Kanan Jarrus
Oh,
is
wait.
in it, bro.
Wait. Oh, okay. I was gonna say is Jimmy Fallon in that.
That's Fever Pitch.
Oh, that might be what I'm thinking of. Anyway, guys, let's talk about some more directors. Wrapping out Resistance Report this week. Our last story is going to be about how the Acolyte show has snagged Netflix's Daredevil director. Now, they've done a lot of work outside of Daredevil. That's probably the most notable one. But Alex Garcia Lopez is the person that's coming to the Acolyte. Now, a couple other things I should mention is they worked on Blindsided and Karen and Cowboy Bebop and Cloak and Dagger, Luke Cage, The Punisher.
They worked on Karen, the episode from Daredevil.
Oh, right. Yes.
Who did?
And Blind. Yeah.
This director.
Yes. The two episodes that they did. And then but what I was going to say about this though is I didn't watch Daredevil, and that obviously had great critical reception and fan reception. Along with Punisher, if I'm not mistaken. A couple other ones though here. Cowboy Bebop, not so much. Luke Cage, not so much.
Luke Cage was great.
You thought it was great? I thought people really did not like that.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Or am I I'm thinking of Chung? No, the other one, the other Netflix show that people didn't like, Iron Fist.
Iron
one
Fist
was
people didn't
not
like, and
received well.
Defenders
Right.
people didn't like. The Punisher
Okay,
people
yeah.
loved. Luke Cage people loved. Cloak and Dagger people loved. That wasn't on Netflix.
Okay, so
that was on
those groups,
Freeform.
Alex worked on a lot of the good ones.
Yes.
put it that way,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know
Witcher's
about
good as
Cloak
well.
and Dagger. I don't know if that was well received or not.
Oh, yeah, the
Witcher,
Witcher,
I
yeah.
think was.
It was
Yeah,
on
so-
Freeform. It's
Okay,
good.
so mostly positive. All right, let's jump
Yes.
over to you, John. What do you think about this announcement? Do you think the Acolyte has another pair of good hands on the show?
So this again reminds me of the Mandalorian conversation about the directors. I mean that we just had, but also we've been having for a long time now. Is that I think it goes showrunner and then trickles down from there. Like when you think of Andor and you have like Tony Gilroy running the show, you're like, that's tight. It's gonna be a tight ship. It's not gonna be messing around. They're gonna execute well. Favreau with the Mandalorian, same thing. I think with Leslie Headland, like, you have someone who knows exactly what they want to do. She's been a successful showrunner already with Russian Doll. So I think it starts there. And then if you trust that person as a showrunner, then you'll likely trust their choices for director. The Acolyte is such a fascinating project to me because it's really that one that's sort of laying in the weeds, and they're filming it now. And there's so many other things that people are talking about that I feel like it's this year's version of Andor, when Andor wasn't really being talked about a lot too. Now I know Andor wasn't, the most watched or anything, but like critically praised, audiences praised, all that stuff. I feel like the Acolyte is on that path. It's sort of like laying in the weeds a bit. And out of these shows that Alex Garcia Lopez worked on, I really like The Punisher a lot. And what's important about that is they've tried The Punisher so many times in live action.
Yes,
3
they did.
different iterations of movies, Dolph Lundgren, Thomas Jane, and then the guy who's actually going to play an admiral in Ahsoka. Ray
Is it
Stevenson?
Thomas Jane or Thomas Kane?
Thomas
Why
Jane.
Why am I thinking Thomas Kane?
So 3 iterations, and none of them were all that
Citizen
good.
Yeah.
So the fact that they did it with John Bernthal on a TV show and they made it was great, says a lot, because The Punisher has failed miserably many times in live action. It's a very successful, like, popular Marvel character. So that's a great sign as it is. I really did enjoy especially the first season of The Punisher. So I'm excited to see, what they bring to the table between Leslie Headland and all the directors, and if there's one project of somebody I like, there's a lot of times these people, Bryce Dallas Howard never directed anything. She shows up and knocks the Mandalorian out of the park. I know she has the familial ties and probably a lot of coaching from her father and stuff.
Just natural talent.
Natural
sure.
talent,
Yeah.
right? And if you're someone who already has a successful resume, you guys we just fired off all these shows that Alex worked on. That this is like one of the least of my concerns. So I'm excited to see what he does with Star Wars. So cool. And then there was another director that another source was saying was hired too, I believe, part of the story.
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, Koganada. After Yang, I guess Koganada is another person they're saying is going to be a director on the Acolyte. So that's the second one that they have in this story from a different source, I guess.
Nice. It's really a sentence. That's why I missed it. It's like a sentence in this article, and then everything else is about Alex Garcia Lopez.
So there's a guy, what's his name? Daniel Richman. He's like a big, like, leaker guy or scoop guy, and he's reporting that he did it on his Patreon or whatever, and it got around. But yeah, Koganada is a South Korean director, and he's done a bunch of stuff too, and they're reporting that he's involved. So I don't know how many directors they're going to have, but I assume Leslie Headland, did they confirm she's directing like the pilot or something? I'm guessing. That's what she did for Russian Doll, I think. But anyway, the Acolyte's just very interesting to me. Especially the dark side aspect of it. We don't know much about it. I'm very intrigued to learn more about it, which might be at Celebration.
Yeah,
maybe we get a teaser for the Acolyte.
I really hope we get more Acolyte.
They should be finishing filming soon. Maybe we get a little sizzle or a brief teaser.
I hope so.
I think so. Lacey, what are your thoughts? Anything to add to the director edition news?
Yeah, I first of all, as always, anytime something gets announced as something in production, we're excited. We're ready to go because that means one more thing is happening. True. That being said, like we discussed earlier, I've seen a lot of his stuff. I've watched a bunch of The Witcher. I watched Luke Cage. Punisher is something actually Matt recently got into in the past year, and he loves this version of the Punisher. And I've seen a lot of the episodes too, and they're very, very good. A little too violent for me, but very good. Just the way that they're shot alone is just like the different viewpoints, and they like get these beautiful shots, and just very creative. And those are things that I'm sure you guys know, listeners and whatnot, that I appreciate probably more than others, I would say, is just like when something is done from a different viewpoint than the normal thing. I just find that's anytime I see something done differently, I immediately go, how is that done? Like, how did they get this shot? And I'm the person that will literally sit there being like, look at this shot. How did they get this? Because it's just so interesting to me about how someone can take something and make it mean so much more and make you connect with the story just from a different point of view of where the camera is or the movement of the camera. So I think directors and cinematographers, but definitely directors too, make all the difference in getting those shots and really deciding where they're going to focus the action and where things are going to be, where the camera is going to kind of focus within the scene. So I'm all for it. If he's done a lot of these Marvel shows like Luke Cage, Punisher, Daredevil, you got to imagine he's good at fight scenes. He's good at
Yeah.
fight scenes. He's
Oh,
good
yeah.
at action.
True.
So I would imagine he's coming in as a specialist on that. Like if we're expecting to get some Sith bad guys like really kicking butt and having these awesome fight scenes, which we would expect from the people that are in there, you know, you've got the girl from Logan, you've got Amandla who's done Hunger Games and other stuff too. You've got the guy from Squid Games. Like you should expect these people to be ready to do stunt work and fight scenes. So this guy's coming in as an expert where Leslie Headland, not to say that she's not an expert, but maybe she doesn't know it as well as someone like him, who's been on multiple Marvel comic book superhero shoots. I mean, that's who you bring in. You're like, I need someone that's going to get this the best. Like some of the best fights I've ever seen recently have been Daredevil. Like that hallway scene where he fights down the hallway, and it kind of reminds me of The Mandalorian, honestly, episode 6, where he's on that spaceship and the lights flashing, which kind of gave us like Batman vibes. Daredevil had one of the best scenes where the camera moves with him as he goes down this hallway and he's taking guy out like one by one. It's
And the lights were
insane.
flickering.
Yeah, it's so well done. And that comes down to camera work. Now, I don't know if that's what Alex Garcia Lopez did. I'm assuming not, because that was pretty early on in Daredevil, but that's not something that just ends with one episode. That translates throughout the series. So even if he didn't know how to do it to begin with, he might have learned those things as he went through these series. And Punisher is definitely a fight scene heavy show. Like every scene the guy gets into fist fights and all this other stuff. And especially with Punisher and Daredevil, I'd say more than Luke Cage, just because of who the main characters are. Luke Cage is obviously like very strong, very like you can't hurt him. You could shoot bullets at him and he's fine.
Like
whereas Daredevil and Punisher, like they take some nasty hits. Like the camera gets in their face and they're bleeding and sweating and breathing and like you're really in the fight with them. So I would assume that if we're taking kind of those vibes and those energies from those series and bringing them into Star Wars. And if you're talking about training the Sith and like the Sith going in and getting dirty and like doing crazy things to like take over, you're probably going to see some really nasty fights. And I don't think Leslie Headland's going to hold back either. She wants to get right in there and get into the dirty side of the Sith because there has to be a reason that they took over. You know, there has to be a reason that they were able to infiltrate these things. And the only way you're going to do that is if you play dirty. So I'm pumped about this choice. I think he's going to do a great job. And I'm excited to see how it translates into this show because from this resume alone, it seems like the Acolyte's going to have the most action we've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
At least crazy fight scenes.
I did look up the hallway scene is episode 2, so he did not work on that one. But no, it is interesting how much action you're bringing to this because sometimes when I think about the Acolyte, I think more of a
lore base, probably.
No, well, yeah, sort of. I don't know how to say this without saying this because I'm looking at the Leslie Headland Russian doll and how she has this whole thing about time manipulation. So the only comparison there is World Between Worlds, which I don't want to get into that. but what I'm saying is like, what's the line from Poe where it's like dark science, magic, secrets only
that's
the Sith
Beaumont
know.
Kin.
Beaumont Kin.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Only secrets the Sith knew.
Yeah. Dark science.
cloning dark science. Yes, you could only
Do some Holdo maneuvers. Do some real damage.
yeah, but that's what I think of. I think like them being able to say that's what the show would be more about. It'd be like these dark sciences and these things that
Yeah, it makes sense.
were going on that were part of the dark side and magic, and they weren't
More
really
like
making
mystical,
big moves at
manipulative.
this time.
Yeah.
They were sort of like just moving in the shadows at this time. So I don't know.
Right.
But
I'm just saying you have
all for
Carrie Ann
action as
Moss.
well. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Carrie Ann Moss is on the crew.
Oh, I
and you're not gonna
forgot
have-
she's in this.
Right.
You're not going to
Yeah.
do fight scenes with her. Like, come on,
Yeah.
she's the queen
Yeah,
of
you
fight
should have
scenes.
it. All right, guys. Well, let's wrap this up. Some good stuff talking about the future of Star Wars TV mostly today. We're going to move into our next section here, which is going to be Will of the Force.
I fear nothing, for all is as the Force wills it.
Alrighty. Lacey, do you want to do this or you want me to do it?
I highlighted the notes. I think you should do it.
Oh, all right. Here's the deal. Will of the Force. You know how it goes by now. Or if you're new, basically, we have questions. Some come from us, some come from our patrons. And we decide, will it happen? Will it not happen? And we give our answers on that. And we got a few here for us and you to answer. And of course, if you want to be part of the show and submit one of these topics to the show, join our Patreon. Patreon.com/Resistance Broadcast. Get your questions submitted. Lacey puts a post up. Submit your Will of the Force topics with a big gif of Chirrut Way, and you guys send your questions. We pick them, we put them on the show, and you become a part of it. Now, this first one comes from us to you and us. Will Mando and Grogu establish a permanent home on Mandalore? Now, it doesn't mean it has to be in season 3. Just tossing it out there. So I'm going to start with Lacey on this one.
I think yes. I think he's going to make Mandalore a proper place to live by the end of this series. But at the same time, while I'm saying this out loud, I might change my mind because I'm thinking like, oh, they could go live there. But then I'm thinking like, a panning shot of a beautiful location where he's living with all the Mandalorians. And I'm like, okay, but that could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be that planet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of feel like he's just going to live somewhere else. Maybe Bo-Katan's planet.
Oh, okay. So in the same system, just not
somewhere else.
Mandalore itself.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, James, how about you? Where are you at with this?
Well, the first thing is, Lacey, you bring up that age-old point that I've always made, which is like the question comes down to, is it this one place or literally anywhere else, including the imagination of planets that are places that has never existed, that doesn't exist yet, that our creators haven't shown us yet? So I got to go with no. But part of the reason is, and I'm glad we're talking about this because this is something I forgot to bring up when we did Mando Fan Show. So this is Mando Fan Show 1.1,
2.5.
right?
Whoa. That's going to confuse fans when they pick up Mando Fan Show.
Exactly.
Chapter 18, man.
The thing here is that I don't understand what is going on with this whole water thing because number one, the armor they've set up multiple areas. They seem like they have this current like cave, right? They're bathing this new person, he's becoming a Mandalorian by taking this oath in the water, but she's very strict on Din that he has to go all the way to this other one to replenish himself. And if I were him, I'm like, I don't understand. Like, why are you making me go to this like poisoned, dead planet to redeem myself?
Poisoned, ravaged.
Yeah,
whatever.
You're baptizing the kid in the pond in the front yard. Like, just like why shouldn't any Mandalorian have to be done in the like holy waters? Why is it such a big deal? I don't know.
Well, that's actually a great question. That's actually a really solid question, James.
What?
His is for atonement and redemption. That kid is just being initiated.
I know.
That kid did no wrong. Din Djarin did.
But the way I'm just looking at it is being like, it's sort of like replenishment or like rebaptized into the faith or something like that. And I'm like, why can't why can't you just have to go through that process again? Why does it have to be in a specific spot when everybody else goes through the same entry into this religion or cult, but they can do it in just any water that happens to be around, or sanctified for the time being. I don't know. It's just a
honestly
weird
think
situation.
honestly, I think she just wants him to go away. So she's saying, hey, if you go do this, you know what I mean? Like, hey, if you go do this, we'll let you back in. He's like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And she's like, he's never going to do that. And then he actually went and did it.
She like picks up the book. She's like, you must bring 33 M&Ms and a copy of the Da
Like-
Vinci Code signed by the, it's
Like,
all
how many
these
times
weird
have you heard of that where someone's like, oh, or like
Yeah.
someone that's bidding on a job for your house and like they don't jive well with you? They'll be like, oh, yeah, this job's going to be $20,000. And you're like, there's no way that's realistic. But they know you're not going to go for it. So it's
Oh,
an easy
man.
out.
Yeah. So James, you're no, right?
I'm a no on that. Yep. What do you think, John?
That is, you're right that we should, like, I wish we talked about this too on the Mando fan show, because now that I think about it, when he was showing her that thing with the slate with the like this translates or whatever, she almost responded as if she had no idea what it was. So because she just goes after a long pause, "This is the way."
I think she's just making stuff up as she goes, which do you blame her?
So like the Lacey's
Yeah.
point, she meant this, but like maybe she was like sending him to go die or what? But that's how I
Could
felt.
you imagine he
Bo-Katan.
comes back after all of that?
Yeah.
If he ever gets there, he comes back and they all have their helmets off.
I know. And then Bo-Katan
He like
was
walks into the room and everybody's like, like all putting their
Yeah.
like on. It's like Lego Batman when he shows up to that Justice League party.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
And then Bo-Katan was like, "Goodbye, Din Djarin." And that, to me, her tone was like, "He's gonna die. I'm never gonna see him again." So I feel like he was getting sent to his death from every faction.
Yeah.
My answer, here's where I'm having a hard time with this question, is because like the Mandalorians were nowhere to be found in the sequel trilogy, and you got to think if they restore the whole planet and like restore their race or society, whatever you want to call it, that they would be around at some point. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm going to say no also. I'd like to think that they're going to sort of carve their own path in the end, though they are really setting him up to be this like chosen one for the Mandalorians. Like he's like the Anakin of Mandalore. So I don't know. I'm still saying no because of the odds thing, James, but
Yeah. To be fair, I was going to say Force Awakens and Last Jedi happened in like a day, and then they may have shown up at the end of Rise of Skywalker, and we just don't really know.
yeah. Some people thought they saw like a Razor Crest, but it's like, well, that doesn't work either.
Well, but I'm just saying, like,
No,
there's
I agree.
so many ships. It could have
Yeah.
been like so many of those other ones. were
Lando and Chewie
Mandalorian
just
ships.
cruise by Mandalore with like a big sign like they do over the beach. It says like, "Come
Yeah.
join the fight against the Final Order." All right, next one. It comes from Patreon. This is Major Colton Bliss. What is up? Thank you for this. And Colton said, "Will Ezra
Such a good
speak with a
name.
Force-ghost Kanan in Ahsoka or another live-action show in the future?" James, we're gonna
Snap! What a
fire-
good question.
fire this off to you. Now we know we heard Kanan in the Rise of Skywalker, so he has some sort of realm abilities. So what do you think?
I have not thought of this, but yes,
In Ahsoka or somewhere else?
in Ahsoka.
Ooh,
I mean, unless Ezra, I don't know the context of how important Ezra is going to be, because we have to think like, oh, they're all going to be equally important. It's like, no, it's Ahsoka's show. It's going to be about Ahsoka. He's going to be one of the characters that plays a role, but it's like, so I don't know about future events if they do like multiple shows, Sabine and Ezra show like after that or whatever.
Okay.
But to me, I think this is an absolute lock. This is this character and his master, Freddie Prinze Jr., obviously capable of doing voice work, wanting to do voice work. I mean, it just, so much of that makes so much sense. I don't think we would get a Force ghost in person, but I think like him talking to him like Obi-Wan style could be very possible. When I say Obi-Wan style, sorry, I mean like run, Luke, like that voice.
So you just hear the
style.
voice.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing, that him having him, doing the fire meditative, and he hears the voice and he has the conversation, but he's not there like
So
physically.
no glowy.
Because they don't want to have to
cue.
cast Kanan, but to hear him would be amazing.
And you could
Nope.
still use Freddie Prinze.
Yes. Yeah.
No Kanan sitting on a log is what you're trying to tell me.
No.
Okay. I'm going to jump in quick and just say, yeah, I agree. I think this is a lock as well.
Man,
Lacey, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Boom.
And we all think
Bang,
it'll be Freddie, or you think they're going to do a recast?
I think it'll be Freddie, but voice. You can't have Hera in that too without him talking to her at some point.
Yeah. The tricky, like, John, are you saying he would show up as a Force ghost? Because then we're talking about casting and recasting and all this other stuff.
So yeah, when I read his question, he wrote Force Ghost, so I thought physical manifestation, but I didn't even think of the just voice element. So I like your idea better, actually. So
ask
great
us
question
again,
by Colton. I'm
Colton.
not saying his question is not great. It
Ask
is.
us again next week. Will the Force ghost apparition be just a voice or a casting? And if so, who would you cast?
Yeah, will it be a free roaming apparition or whatever they say in Ghostbusters?
It's everything but his face.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, what was that movie with the dad, the Pixar movie where it's just like his head's not there? Onward.
It's with Chris.
Onward,
Yeah, Chris Pratt and Tom
Yeah.
Holland.
Side
That movie was
note-
terrible. I hated that movie.
No,
Oh,
I was
I
gonna
kinda
say
liked it.
very underrated movie,
Yeah.
very good movie.
I did not like
Sad,
it.
but all right.
Yeah,
Here's
very sad. I cry every time at the end of
Yeah.
that.
all right, Gillerin. Here's the deal. This next one, will Grogu kill anyone in the Mandalorian season 3?
Yes, but it will be in defense of someone else. It won't be like cold blood.
Like the Jedi way?
Sure,
all
it will be
defense.
like, oh, if someone's attacking the Mandalorian, he'll step in.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool. James, how about you?
I say no. I think they want this character to be the embodiment of the right way to do things. And I know they've toyed kind of with the idea of like, he was choking Cara Dune when they were doing the arm fight
fair.
and stuff. But I think that they were showing that he doesn't know any better, and the smarter Grogu gets, which he very clearly is, or is going to be in
It's true.
season
He does
3,
love stuff more.
I think they want this character to be a good character. They don't want to like toy with dark side stuff with him. So
Yeah.
Well,
gonna
I'm
say
saying
no.
more of like not
No,
necessarily aggressive. No, but I'm saying like not even aggressive. I'm saying more like I don't know, in circumstance, I guess.
I'm
Sure.
saying
That's legitimate.
You're
completely.
You're putting Grogu in the Superman Man of Steel moment where for the greater good,
I've never
he has
seen it,
to
but
do
sure.
Okay, yeah. But anybody who has seen it knows what I'm talking about. And it's controversial because he does the right thing, but he has to do the wrong thing to do the right thing, and it's tough. And I just don't think they want that with Grogu. They would focus on Din Djarin making that type of decision.
Yeah.
John, you have seen Man of Steel. Where do you stand?
On that part, I
No,
like
just about this.
well, I mean, Yoda brutally killed fools, so
That is a good point.
he threw his lightsaber through someone's chest and then ripped it out.
You just crushed my point.
But that's Yoda, and maybe Yoda had to learn a few things, or maybe that was out of
Cut people's
desperation
heads off.
because of the situation. But with
What was his name,
Grogu,
General Greer.
I'm saying no with Grogu also because of the parallel between, and I mistakenly said Mythosaur. It was the Mudhorn. He violently entered that situation to help Din kill it, and then with the Rancor, he lulled it to sleep. And he's learning the way of the Jedi, which now we learned he spent a year with Luke, and we know that Yoda always said a Jedi uses their powers for knowledge and defense and never attack. So to Lacey's point, it could be in defense that could happen, but I'm leaning towards he's not going to kill anybody. And I also think it might be also because he is still looked at as a baby, and I think kids won't be able to come to terms with him killing people yet.
Oh, I showed my daughter the scene of Grogu with the Ancellans, and the moment Grogu was on screen, she had the biggest smile on her
That's
face.
great. That's cool.
And then as soon as the Ancellans started talking, she started laughing because she thought whatever they were saying was funny, and then continued to have a big smile on her face. And then as soon as it like cut away, she was out of the room. She was
That's
like, I'm
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good
Wow.
attention span, though.
But it shows you that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, they know what they're doing. These aren't just for adults.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. All right. Next and last question of the night, day, morning. Patreon submission. A new major, Big Dave. The biggest Dave we have in the Resistance. Dave, I want to thank you for joining us, and thanks for this question. Love it. Will season 2 of Andor feature any of Jin, Galen, Krennic, or Tarkin? And Dave said that he said yes to at least one, but he didn't say which one. So Dave, you gotta let us know which one.
Sneaky.
Yeah. We are starting this one with James.
I'm gonna say no, but because to me, I think that Andor's story is about him before he got to that point in his life, and that point in his life is when Jin and Galen and Krennic and Tarkin became not Tarkin, but specifically Jin, Galen, and Krennic were on the radar now of like the rebellion needs to start turning their eyes towards these people. Tarkin is the only one that I think is like, that's tough, because that's a character who's in power all the way from episode 3 to episode 4, like
Right,
20
yeah.
years. But I still say no on that character, because I think that was supposed to be a big technical feat that I don't know that they want to go back to and explore that again. And he doesn't necessarily have to be an Andor story, because he was in Rogue One, which involved the Death Star and all that. And I think they want to tell a different story with Andor leading up to that point when Rogue One starts. And all of those people now become on the radar of the rebellion because of the new weapon that is at play. So I'm going to say no on all 4 of those.
All right. I like your logic behind your answers. Lacey, what do you think? Any of these 4 showing up? Jin Erso, Galen Erso, Krennic, or Tarkin in Andor season 2?
I don't think Jin or Galen. I think Krennic and Tarkin.
Both?
I think I think we saw obviously the Death Star being built by the pieces made in that prison. I think there is a reason they're doing that. And I think Gilroy wants to bring in some Tarkin and some Krennic, and they already have the files of Tarkin, so might as well use them.
The files.
Copy, drag it over, paste. Yeah.
All right.
Reanimate.
I'm going just Krennic. And my rundown is it makes 0 sense for Jin to be in Andor story at this point.
Because they meet there. They meet in Rogue One.
And for her to just like be in it and not meet him, it would just be like fan service or something. I don't know.
I guess the question is Saw, right? People would be like, "Oh, will she be seen when he goes to see Saw Gerrera?"
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Galen, no, because I feel like his work was done and he's probably already farming at this point.
I also think, just a side note to that, Lacey, I think Jin is already gone at this point.
That's fair. I'm just saying what people probably think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just saying, I think continuity wise, I think Jin has already left, or was abandoned, however you want to look at that situation by the point Andor has already started, even in season 1.
Yeah. I think she was on the run for like 5 years, and this is 4 years prior. Tarkin, I think the CG budgets might be too much, and it's not worth doing it for just a cameo. And then Krennic, I do think will be in the show, because I think of Liam Neeson returning for Obi-Wan, it would make sense for Krennic to be in the mix and maybe go toe-to-toe with Deidre or something like that. So I think he has said that he would be interested in playing the character again, and this would be the one spot he could actually do it. And Ben Mendelsohn is a killer actor, and I think Tony Gilroy would love to have him. And he said something about familiar faces returning in this season. So I think Krennic's the only one for me. But I thought you both had really logical answers for your reasoning too. So we'll see. But Dave, Big Dave, we got to know, man. Which one did you think? Let us know.
Great question, Dave. Awesome question.
And for all these questions, everybody let us know in the comments or Twitter or what have you, across social media, TRB Podcasts, what you think about all these questions. Give us your answers on those and let us know what you think of our answers. But that's it, folks. That's the end of the show. I just want to thank everybody for listening, watching, being a part of TRB, however you found us. We're glad you're here. We're very excited. This year is just getting rolling, and we're so pumped to what we have going on and what Star Wars has going on. So make sure you do subscribe to our show on all platforms. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We're putting out an episode on the original Scream tomorrow because Scream 6 is hitting theaters Thursday night, I believe. So let's go back to the OG and talk about one of my favorite movies from when I was coming of age. Lacey, how about you?
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gillerin and on TikTok at It's Lacey Gillerin.
Very nice. James?
Twitter and Instagram at Myra Trunks, where you can find me.
All right.
And on the Bad Batch reaction show every week on Wednesdays.
That's right. You're doing a killer job there, man. And that's another reason to subscribe to the channel, like we said at the top. Wednesday night, we'll be back. So just 2 days from now, if you're listening to this on a Monday, the Mando Fan Show, 8:30 East, discussing Chapter 18, directed by Rachel Morrison, of The Mandalorian Season 3. And we're going to be joined by our first guest of the season, Kevin from Toying Around. So we are so pumped. And you're going to get your second number in the Mando code. We're going to have a great time Wednesday night. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you join us for the Mando Fan Show. And enjoy the beginning of your week. And we'll see you next time right here on the Resistance broadcast. See you around, kids.